You think modern life is built on logic, progress, and reason, that we've moved past superstition, that fear no longer controls us. But that's an illusion. Modern life isn't the opposite of ancient life, that it's its continuation, just cleaner, quieter, and better organized. At the core of everything we do is the same thing that drove the first humans standing around a fire at night. Fear. Not loud fear. Not screaming panic. But deep, constant awareness that life is fragile and can end without explanation. The first and strongest fear humans ever had was death. Not just dying, but disappearing without meaning. In ancient times, death wasn't abstract, it was visible. Bodies stayed where they fell. They attracted animals, disease, violence. Death threatened the entire group, not just the individual. Humans did something brilliant. They created ritual. Burial wasn't about respect, it was about control. Placing the body somewhere specific, marking it, repeating actions, saying words in a certain order. Ritual told the brain, this is handled. This is contained. This makes sense. That's why nearly every civilization, isolated from each other, invented burial rituals, different gods, different symbols, same structure, because fear produces the same solutions everywhere. Fast forward to today, we tell ourselves we are more evolved, more rational. But notice how uncomfortable modern society still is with death. We hide it. People don't die at home anymore. They die in hospitals, behind doors, monitored by machines. Bodies are cleaned, prepared, made presentable. Death is scheduled, packaged, and removed from daily life as fast as possible. Why? Because the fear never left. We still need rituals, but now we call them procedures, services, traditions. Funerals today aren't quieter than ancient ones, they're just more polite. Black clothes instead of ashes. Silence instead of wailing. But the emotional function is identical. Give the living closure. Tell the nervous system, you are safe. This has meaning. That's why people feel disturbed when someone dies without a funeral. Or without a grave. Or without acknowledgement. It feels wrong. Not because it is immoral, but because it breaks an ancient psychological contract. Death must be witnessed. Death must be framed. Death must be explained. Otherwise, the fear leaks. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most things we call respect are actually fear management. We don't honor the dead because they need it. We do it because we do. Culture didn't eliminate fear of death. It gave it structure. And once fear has structure, it feels like tradition. If fear of death was the first force that shaped human behavior, fear of chaos was the second. And in many ways, it was even more powerful. Chaos meant unpredictability, and unpredictability meant danger. In early human groups, chaos wasn't philosophical, it was physical. No rules meant stronger people taking more food, louder people dominating decisions, violence deciding outcomes. In that world, fairness didn't exist. Only survival did. So humans learned something crucial very early. If chaos is left alone, it always favors aggression. And aggression kills cooperation. A group that couldn't control internal chaos didn't last long. It collapsed from the inside before any external threat even arrived. This is where rules were born. Not as moral ideals, but as survival tools. Rules weren't created because people were good. They were created because people were dangerous when unregulated. Order became a shield against ourselves. Look at something as simple as a line. A cue. Today it feels polite, even boring. But its origin is violent. Without a line, there is pushing. Without pushing, there is fighting. Without fighting, there is stability. The line prevents escalation. It is a silent agreement that says, no one takes more than their turn, because if they do, everything breaks. That's why lines feel right, even when they're inefficient. And why people feel immediate stress when someone cuts in front. It triggers something ancient. A signal that the agreement is breaking, that chaos is leaking back in. Modern society is built entirely on this logic. Laws, schedules, contracts, systems, procedures. All of them exist to reduce uncertainty. To make tomorrow predictable. To make outcomes less dependent on raw power. We like to tell ourselves that rules are about justice, but that's only partially true. Rules are first and foremost about containment. They keep behavior within safe limits. That's also why bureaucracy feels suffocating but necessary. People complain endlessly about paperwork, regulations, and systems. Yet when those systems collapse, fear rises instantly. Not freedom. Fear. Because underneath all the frustration is an understanding we rarely admit. Without structure, things get ugly fast. Compare ancient times to today. In the past, order was enforced by elders, physical strength, or immediate punishment. Today, it's enforced by institutions, cameras, databases, and social pressure. Different tools, same purpose. The goal has always been the same: reduce chaos enough so the group can function. Even time itself became a form of control. Clocks, calendars, schedules. Ancient humans lived by sunlight and seasons. Modern humans live by minutes and deadlines. Why? Because time discipline reduces uncertainty. When everyone knows when something happens, conflict decreases. Predictability replaces negotiation. This is why disorder makes people anxious even when it doesn't directly harm them. A messy room. A delayed train. An unclear rule. The discomfort isn't about inconvenience. It's about the signal those things send. The signal that order is weakening. And once order weakens, fear returns. So we obey rules not because we love them, but because we remember, somewhere deep inside, what happens without them. Culture teaches us to call this civilization, but its emotional engine is still ancient fear, refined and normalized. Order didn't make us free. It made us safer. And safety always comes before freedom in the human brain. If chaos threatened the group and death threatened the body, loneliness threatened something just as critical: belonging. For most of human history, being alone wasn't a lifestyle choice or a personality trait. It was a death sentence. No shared food, no protection, no one to watch your back while you slept. A single human was weak. A group was strong. Survival depended not on intelligence or morality, but on inclusion. That fear shaped us more than we like to admit. Humans didn't just evolve to cooperate, they evolved to need others. Isolation triggered stress because stress increased vigilance. Vigilance increased survival. The nervous system learned that being separated from the group was dangerous, even if nothing bad was happening yet. So we created systems to prevent that separation. Families weren't only about love. They were about continuity. Tribes weren't just social structures. They were insurance. Ritual gatherings, shared meals, seasonal festivals. All of them existed to reinforce one message: you are still part of us. Look at ancient celebrations. Harvest festivals, solstices, religious holidays. They often coincided with moments of uncertainty, changes in seasons, shortages, transitions. People gathered not because they were happy, but because they were anxious. Gathering reduced fear. It synchronized emotion. It reassured everyone that the group was intact. Modern holidays work the same way, even if the language has changed. We say they're about joy, tradition, or rest. But notice the pressure surrounding them. The expectation to show up. The discomfort when you don't. The quiet judgment of absence. These aren't random social behaviors. They are enforcement mechanisms. Soft ones, but powerful. A holiday isn't just a celebration. It's a test of belonging. That's why people feel lonely during holidays more than at any other time. Not because holidays create loneliness, but because they expose it. They highlight who is connected and who is not. Ancient humans would have understood this instantly. Being excluded from the group gathering meant something was wrong. Even today, the fear hasn't changed. Only the symbols have. Likes, messages, invitations, group chats. The digital world didn't remove the need for belonging, it amplified it. Now rejection is visible. Silence is quantifiable. You can see when others gather without you. In ancient times, exclusion happened physically. Today, it happens psychologically. But the brain reacts the same way. This is why people follow social norms even when they don't believe in them. Why they attend events they don't enjoy. Why they smile when they want to leave. The cost of non-participation feels higher than the discomfort of participation, because the brain still calculates risk using ancient logic. Belonging equals safety. Isolation égale danger. And here's the part we rarely talk about. Traditions don't just bring people together, they keep people in line. They reward conformity with acceptance. They punish deviation with silence. Not because society is cruel, but because society is afraid. Afraid of fragmentation. Afraid of individuals drifting too far from the group. Compare old and new again. In the past, being expelled from the tribe meant starvation. Today it might mean social invisibility. But emotionally, the experience lands in the same place. Anxiety. Shame. A pull to return. That's why traditions feel comforting even when they make no logical sense. They signal stability. They say, this has happened before, and we survived it together. Fear of loneliness didn't disappear with modern life. It became scheduled, organized, branded as celebration. And once fear wears the mask of joy long enough, we stop recognizing it as fear at all. At some point, fear stopped feeling like fear. That's the moment it became culture. This didn't happen suddenly. It happened slowly, across generations, through repetition. When a behavior born from fear works, it gets repeated. When it gets repeated often enough, it becomes habit. When a habit survives long enough, it becomes tradition. And when no one remembers why the tradition started, it becomes normal. Normal is one of the most dangerous words humans use. Not because it's wrong, but because it hides its origins. Normal doesn't mean natural. Normal means familiar. It means something worked well enough in the past that no one questions it anymore. This is how fear survives without being recognized. Once fear is encoded into routines, laws, holidays, and expectations, it no longer feels like fear. It feels like reality itself. Think about how people react when someone breaks an unspoken rule. The reaction is rarely logical. It's emotional. Discomfort. Irritation. Even anger. Not because real harm occurred, but because something deep was violated. The brain senses instability. A crack in the structure. A reminder that order is maintained, not guaranteed. In ancient times, breaking tradition threatened group survival. Today, it threatens social comfort. But the emotional response is inherited from a time when consequences were immediate and severe. This is why culture resists change even when change is clearly beneficial. Fear doesn't evaluate ideas, it protects structures. The structures feel safe because they are known. Unknown alternatives feel risky, regardless of evidence. Compare this to early humans again. When a drought came, rituals intensified. When danger increased, traditions became stricter. Uncertainty always produced more structure, never less. Modern society behaves the same way. In times of crisis, rules multiply. Surveillance incréase. Social expectations tighten. Freedom is postponed for safety, every single time. This doesn't make humans weak. It makes them predictable. Fear is efficient. It creates systems that last. It outlives individuals. That's why civilizations are less about values and more about emotional memory. What scared us enough to organize around it? What hurt us enough to remember? And here's the uncomfortable realization. Most people aren't living their lives. They are maintaining inherited fear management systems. They follow paths, celebrate moments, obey norms, and feel guilty when they don't, without ever asking where those feelings came from. Culture doesn't ask for your understanding. It asks for your participation. That's why awareness feels destabilizing. Once you see fear underneath the structure, you can't unsee it. You realize that many shoulds are just ancient survival strategies running on autopilot. This doesn't mean we should reject culture. Without fear, there would be no civilization, no cooperación, no continuity. Fear kept us alive long enough to build everything around us. But there's a difference between using fear and being ruled by it. The moment you recognize fear as the architect of your world, you gain distance. Not freedom from fear, but freedom of choice. You can decide which rituals still serve you and which only exist because they always have. Modern life is not built on freedom. It is built on refined fear. Sanitized. Normalized. Invisible. And the final truth is this. You are not as independent as you think. But you are more conscious than those who never question the structure at all. Fear built the world. Awareness decides what happens next. Once you understand that fear is woven into culture, something subtle changes. You stop seeing society as a set of neutral rules and start seeing it as a living memory. A memory of what once almost destroyed us. This is why culture feels heavier than logic. You can argue with facts, but you don't argue with inherited fear. You feel it in your body before you can explain it in words. In ancient times, fear was obvious. A predator in the dark. Hunger. Cold. An enemy tribe. The response was direct and physical. Today, fear is abstract. It hides behind expectations, timelines, milestones, the sense that you're late, behind, or doing something wrong without knowing exactly why. Modern fear doesn't shout. It whispers. It tells you that you should be further by now. That deviation is risky. That being different might cost you connection. It doesn't threaten you with death. It threatens you with exclusion, instability, meaninglessness. And for a social species, those threats still feel existential. This is why people defend the way things are, even when it hurts them. Why they cling to routines that exhaust them. Why they feel guilt when they rest, anxiety when they slow down, and shame when they choose a path that doesn't match the script. The script isn't rational. It's ancestral. Look at how success is defined today. Timelines for education, career, family, productivity. These aren't universal truths. They are modern rituals designed to reduce uncertainty. They give life a predictable shape, the same way ancient rites gave shape to death, seasons, and chaos. When you follow them, you feel safe. When you don't, fear rushes in to fill the gap. But here's the important part most people never reach. Awareness doesn't destroy culture. It humanizes it. When you see fear for what it is, you stop fighting yourself. You realize that anxiety isn't a personal failure. It's an old alarm system reacting to a world it no longer fully understands. Ancient humans feared the dark because the dark killed them. Modern humans fear silence, stillness, and unstructured time for the same reason. The brain interprets the unknown as danger. But the context has changed, even if the wiring hasn't. This is where choice begins. Not the kind of freedom people advertise, but a quieter one. The freedom to pause before reacting. To notice when a rule is protecting you, and when it's just repeating itself. To participate in rituals without mistaking them for absolute truth. You don't have to reject society to stop being ruled by its fears. You just have to see them clearly. Fear loses power when it becomes visible. Once named, it can be negotiated with instead of obeyed automatically. Culture will always exist. Fear will always exist. But consciousness changes the relationship. Instead of being pulled by invisible strings, you start noticing the tension. You start asking not, is this normal? But is this necessary for me? That question alone would have been unthinkable in ancient times. Survival didn't allow it. Today it does. And that might be the quiet difference between living inside fear's architecture and finally standing back to see the shape of it. Not to escape it completely, but to choose your place within it.